Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be focusing all about Standard and Standard tournament results. This upcoming weekend on Arena is the Qualifier weekend, both the play-in best of 3 and the actual Qualifier event to try to make the Arena Championship. So today's focus is going to be looking at stats from MTGO leagues and challenges. So to complement the Arena ladder, I like to look at the tournament scene as well, give us kind of a holistic view. We covered some of Standard best decks earlier in the week from the Arena perspective. This will give you the tournament. So MTG Decks does a really nice job in terms of providing a win rate matrix. This is as of the last 15 days, so it should cover a bit of noise from pre-foundations, but for the most part, it will cover post-foundations as well. We're not fully out of an independent sample size of just foundations. So we're going to take a look at some of the kind of ranges in terms of what decks are performing as, and then we'll look at some samples of these decks. I will timestamp and paste all these deck lists so you can easily access them and kind of go from there. So looking at the results themselves, we can see it's right now filtered by games played. So Golgari is the most popular, followed by Dimir Midrange, Gruul, Azorius Tempo, Red deck wins, Boros Auras, we have mono white. Kind of the highest win rate decks overall would be the mono red decks, mono white tokens, the caretakers decks. Boros Auras is about 55%. And then just kind of skimming down, we have Orzhov Demons, mono black demons, kind of scattering in there within like the 25 to almost 30 game range. So kind of looking through it, we could see that red deck is pretty much got the biggest spread, I would say, of positive or near even. There's a couple matchups that are slightly unfavored, but a lot of kind of strong matchups. Some of it is a little small sample. We could see 3 matches here. Not a true indicative coin flip. A lot of things could kind of factor into that, but winning against Golgari, red deck pretty much has one of the highest win rates against Golgari, with exception of like Temur Prowess, but that's only 7 games. So if you're looking like into the spread of like the 3 most popular decks, even the 4 most popular, it's got positive win rates against it. Your mirror match is always going to be 50% because one player is going to win, one player is going to lose. Mono white, okay, like still positive against the Golgari deck, really beats up on Dimir Midrange, can struggle against the Gruul aggro deck, and is pretty mid against Azorius Tempo, winning against mono red. So that's kind of, as you kind of navigate what you're anticipating on seeing, you can make a call in terms of what you want to play in terms of the decks themselves. There's a lot of information here. You can take a look. Some of it, again, like personally, like if I'm looking at this red deck, right, against Dimir Overlords or Domain Overlords, it's got a 75% win rate, but it's only 4 matches. I actually find that matchup a little difficult at times. Game 1, I usually always beat up on them. In post board, they have so much removal, incidental life gain. It's hard to necessarily get the Nemesis King itself line to stop the life gain. They always seem to pull off Zur kind of turn 3 green Overlord into Zur animate on turn 4. That usually gets me in that regard, but I'll link this win rate. You can kind of see, play around with it as well. But let's look at some deck lists and give you some ideas of what you could potentially take to the weekend or just to the ladder in itself. So we have mono red. This went 5-0. There's quite a few different variations, or quite a few folks have been getting 5-0s or doing well. This one's from Junk Manor. Pretty stock list in the main. What we're seeing is 1 fewer Monastery Swiftspear. We're seeing 2 shocks, full set of Lightning Strike Sill, and then 2 Witch Stalkers in the main instead of 3. These shocks were being basically replaced by Burst Lightning in the main. We're also seeing 21 lands as opposed to 20 lands that some of the lists were previously running. Sad, these things just went up in price. All my stores near me were sold out. I haven't bought them in paper yet. The sideboard, we also see kind of the Mountain package to go up in terms of scale. So you're able to go a little bit bigger post board. Sunspine Links, really good against all the greedy mana bases. Also incidental ways to shut off life gain. Golgari, Dimir, they play a bunch of duels, so this is not unusual that this can maybe hit them for 4, 5, 6 damage maybe, potentially in a long game. 3 Forges, we have Twisted Fealty for all the demon decks, and then 1 Koth for kind of the grindier matchups. Koth kind of gets around a lot of the heavy targeted removal decks, and then can also be removal in its own regard. This is another way that can scale up to be an answer to 6 damage creatures. So any of the demons, stuff like that, this is a way to kind of answer that. Also, like I was playing this against Domain a lot, like in the previous iteration of Mono Red, And other than kind of the binding, they don't really have clean answers for Koth. So mono white, this one is by Milblius, another 5/0. So the core of the deck is built around Enduring Innocence, as well as Caretaker's Talent being the draw engine. Bunch of different ways to make tokens. This list here will have Meticulous archive in here as a way to just have a couple blue sources for the sideboard cards we'll look at. And the Scry, most of the lands are going to be plains, so you can take advantage of lay down arms. Bunch of cheap removal, full set of Beza in here, main board Lauren, an Overlord in here, just more token enablers, Virtue for token enablers. But between lay down arms, Get Lost, Soul Partition, and then the Sunfalls, you have a lot of answers, plus the Fountain Port engine to draw you cards. Sideboard gives you access to negates, Authority of the Consoles for the aggressive deck, Forge decks, stuff like that. Jace for the kind of domain, mid-range mirrors like this. In the mirror, you can bring this in. Both players are drawing a bunch of cards. You could potentially mill them out. Lockdown for removal, Valkyrie for aggressive decks, Smite for aggressive decks, Rest in Peace for graveyard hate, and then Exercise is a flexible removal spell. Boros Auras, this one's from Sapao, another 5/0. So you have kind of your mono red creature package. We also have a full set of Kellen in this one, which is really interesting. So 1 mana, 2/1. For 2 mana, it becomes a detective, and whenever this creature deals combat damage, you exile top card, you play it on the turn. Then you can level up again and becomes a 3/2 and gains double strike. I can play pretty nice with kind of the effects. This is actually a mislabel. This one's more of a burn deck with Boros Charm, Lightning Helix, Monstrous Rage, Burst Lightning, and Bolt Wave. This one overall, the stats, like burn wasn't doing great. If you do want to play burn, like this kind of gives you the idea of what you may be looking at. You have the pulses or the cases, and then the forges if they're bringing in heavy removal. But this gives you kind of another idea. So I'm actually curious in this case with the Boros Auras deck, what's being diluted in terms of the classification. Because if you look at Boros Auras, it's got 1 here, and then if you look at Boros Burn, it's got another one here. But I'm wondering how many that are incorrectly tagged. So one of the things with your data quality when you're doing these things, if you're not tagging it correctly from a metadata perspective, it's not going to go great. So what I'll do is at the end, I'll just, in the video description, I'll find a Boros Auras deck and I'll link that in there too in case you want Boros Auras. I just don't want to start digging it up on screen. Then we go to Orzhov Demons, which is an interesting one. So smaller sample size with the Demons list. If we look at it, only 28 matches. But this one here is a 5/0. You got Archfiend in here. You got full set of Alenda, Saint of Dusk. Just kind of grows bigger with life gained. And kind of race creatures on its own. Broncos in here, Preachers. You have a bunch of different removal options. Annoying, Cut Down, Get Lost, Go for the Throat. 1 Dream of Steel and Oil split with 3 Duress. The Virtues in here. Removal, that also gains you life. That plays nicely with Alenda. And then your Unholy Annex package with your Demons. Your sideboard's just got like Sweepers, some Shellies, various removal options, Lily for the grindier matchups, Beza kind of mixed into that. I think largely like, I guess Aclazotz is good in the Dimir matchup, but at one point like Aclazotz was really good into mono red, but because the decks have like the mouse package with double strike and ways to shut off the life gain, it's honestly kind of slow into the mono red matchup at this point. Golgari Mid, so lots of kind of tweaked ways to build it, but this is an example. This one's from Brecca. Apologize for the dog. She's a little upset that we're keeping her off the couch while it's wet. We just washed it. Llanowar Elf is kind of the impact here to kind of move you ahead. You have this one's the creature heavier version with like Moss with Dread Knight, Frillback's main. You have the demon package with Archfiend as well as Unholy Annex, and then just various removal options. We're seeing more Anoint in the main. Not Anoint, Blot-Out. We're seeing copies of Blot-Out just as a way to kind of deal with bigger things, kind of get them that way there. Some Oozes for mainboard Graveyard Hate as well. Sideboard's got like just some removal options. Nissa in here for the grindier matchups, really good against like the tokens decks, stuff like that. Gix Command Sweeper, Frill back another flexible card, graveyards, everything like that. Artifacts, enchantments, more hand hate. Terra Sunder, very flexible removal. Then kind of your grind package between Lily as well as Aclazotz. Temur Mid. So this one was from Jimichu. So this one's kind of the tempo oriented. Things like Enduring Curiosity is the engine of the deck, drawing you a bunch of cards. You have a bunch of cheap flash creatures. Things like Floodprint Drowner could tap things down, Tidebinder for activated abilities, Spyglass Siren, as well as like Mastermind, Spectral Sailor to cheat out Kaido easier. Shieldred to just raise the price of every deck by $90, which is wild. 3 steps ahead is some counters, Phantom Interference, then you have just like your removal package mixed in. Very similar with a lot of these mid-range decks. You have kind of the hand hate. Blue gives you access to some counter spells. You have like the Shieldred Aclazotz for the grind matchups. Flash Freeze was printed, that very good against green and red stuff, and then Ghost Vacuum for graveyard hate. Mono black Demon life gain combo. So this one here was another deck that small sample size, but had a reasonable win rate, all things considered. So this one here has the combo of Bloodthirsty Conquer as well as Enduring Tenacity, where if you gain or drain, your opponent loses the game. Deep Cavern Bat, Aclazotz, as well as Unstoppable Slasher combo. So you got a bunch of different kind of combos there. Unholy Annex mixed in, Virtues, Duresses, whole bunch of removal. Seeing full set of Soulstone Sanctuaries cards, seeing increasing play, in part because it can be all creature types. That also works with the Annex nicely. Liliana Dreadhorde General for the grindier matchups. You're not playing the Japanese anime art, which is like $1,000 for the foil, not more. Cruel Claw Heist for just kind of grindier matchups. Withering Torment could be flexible to hit enchantments. Graveyard Hate, Rageous Robbery for the mid-range decks. Render Inert beats up on all the demons, just takes off their oil counters. The Archfiends and release them that way. Shellys and Anoint, kind of wrapping it up. We then go to Domain Overlords. This one's by Ruby Zilla. They won the standard challenge. They went 9-0. So you got Flood Pits, Mistmoors, and Hotwoods in terms of your Overlords. Kind of core of this deck is you cast them for their impending cost, animate them with Zur, you get lifelink. You can get the attack triggers from them at the same time, even though they're not animated. You also have Scroll Shift, which can be used to exile the impending and get them back for value. Also could protect your stuff from removal. So this is immediate, not until end of turn, so you can't Scroll Shift, sweep, and then kind of go from there. Split up Sunfall, so just kind of respecting the more aggressive decks, just not being all in on your 5-mana sweeper. A couple copies of Herd Migration, Beanstalk for card advantage engine with your Overlords, as well as Leyline Bind. Your sideboards just got counters, Authority for the aggressive decks, Elspeth Smite, Paw Patch Formation, flexible removal option, be rotting against demons, can blow up the Annex, then Doppelgang for kind of the mid-range shells. But like you can see post-board, like this one here, some of them will have the 2-mana exile target attacking creature. Between Smites, Authority slows you down a turn. They can kind of come up the board pretty well for mono red. Azorius Tempo. So this one is 5-0 from Taku123. The decks are trying out some varied numbers. I've seen anywhere between 1 and 4 Kioras. Plays with the plan. You want cards in your graveyard, which makes your Kiora attacks great because you have Threshold, so you get an 8/8. Also draws and discards that helps you set up your reanimation effects, which is nice. The versions on full for Elspeth Smite main, as well as into the Floodmaw, opposed to sometimes they'll play the 2-mana exile target creature. So Soul Partition, I think it is. You have Recommission, Helping Hand, full sets there. Chart of Course, Moment of Truth kind of sets you up for your draws. Ghost Vacuum for Mirrors, Graveyard Hate kind of decks. Exercise, Artifact Enchantment, Big Thing Hate. I do not know. Just Through is just more copies basically of Elspeth Smite. So instead of exile, it just gains you a life. And it's target attacking or blocking, and then Get Lost is more removal. And lastly, we have Temur Prowess, so Temur Otter combo. This one got 2nd place in the challenge. So you have the combo. So Valley Floodcaller makes all your otters and rats tap for mana, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you get to untap them. So with Enduring Vitality, lets them tap for mana. So you basically chain together a bunch of instants and sorceries that keep tapping and untapping. With This Town Ain't Big Enough, you can target repeatedly your Storm Chaser's talent, as well as like Up the Beanstalk, for example. And then you just keep drawing through your deck with generating mana, and then recasting Storm Chaser's talent, going to level 2, getting back This Town Ain't Big Enough. So you just kind of keep looping between it. generate a whole bunch of mana, and eventually wing with like Sanga Tokuzen, or just this gives kind of pseudo prowess to all your creatures, and you can just attack largely through there. Dissection tools for the aggressive decks. Another way to kind of gain some life when it enters the battlefield. So this is kind of another for the aggressive decks. And then when it transforms, target creature and opponent control gets 0x until on the turn where it's its power, so it could be removal as well. Paw Patch formation for, again, enchantment or flying creatures. Ral for the heavy kind of creature removal matchups. Stroke for big mana stuff. Bristle Farmer, just kind of a more fair beatdown way. I've seen sometimes some of these decks play Screaming Nemesis in the side for the aggressive mirrors. Ghost Vacuum in here for Graveyard Hate, and then end the game. So that's it for the week. So these are some ideas. You can take a look and kind of go from there. Ultimately, play the deck you're most comfortable with when you go into these events. Repetition is usually the biggest factor as you kind of know what to mulligan, what not to, and kind of go back. Anyways, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay safe out there, and good luck to those competing.